Chapter 211, Hatching 2. I suddenly let out a breath. It felt like somebody had taped up my mouth and then ripped it off. The constellation, Demon King of Salvation, is looking at the Siswitz industrial complex. My field of view widened, and I saw things that couldn't be seen by incarnations. The industrial complex seemed like a giant circular dome from up high, a circular city centered around the factory. All incarnations within the city were looking at the sky. This. A channel is open. Perhaps they received the message that a temporary channel had opened. A Dakibai has come. Our demon realm is finally receiving attention. Their faces looked thrilled. It was natural. This was a place where people excluded from the scenario gathered. The incarnations, who once hated the constellations and coins, entered the demon world and became the ones who missed them more than anything. Hey, are you okay? Did you hear the message just now? I barely managed to stand up with the support of Jang Haeyoung. Entry into the temporary channel has temporarily delayed the collapse of your incarnation body. I sighed with relief. A channel was an important device that formed the core of a story. My story started recovering just by entering the channel. Of course, the exile penalty wasn't completely removed, but I could earn some time with this. Enter the main scenario to prevent the breakdown of your stories. I had to kill the real revolutionary in order to enter the main scenario. I touched my broken arms and legs as a test. Fortunately, the core stories still seemed safe. The broken parts could be somehow repaired. Your current incarnation body is severely damaged. You need more stories to repair it. The list wasn't confirmed yet, but many stories were taken from the nobles. Most of them were history grade with a few legendary grades mixed in. In any case, I had to move fast before the temporary channel closed. I asked Aileen, who was approaching from the distance, "The injured people." "There are more than I thought." Aileen's expression was dark. At first glance, dozens of people were lying down on the ground. Considering that many of them were critically injured, it would be hard for a lot of them to survive today. Dakibai bag. A familiar holographic window appeared in the air. It had been so frustrating when it was missing. This was the feeling of a rich person who couldn't spend money. I briefly checked if any useful items had been received, and then spent 3,000 coins to buy a large amount of Elaine Forest essence. "Give this to the people." "This, how did you get this?" "Don't ask me anything more." The startled Aileen received the essences with wide eyes. It was natural to be surprised. It was because the Elaine Forest essence was something that could only be obtained through the Dakibai bag. It wasn't available in the demon world where there wasn't a channel. The duration of the temporary channel is very short. I pulled the Dakibai egg out of my bag. The surface of the egg had fine gold cracks. Signs of hatching. A temporary channel was a type of fetal movement for a Dakibai. It was like breathing exercises. I lightly stroked the egg, and a small vibration was felt inside the shell. The Dakibai egg will soon hatch. Consume a healthy story. I quickly pulled out a few story fragments and gave them to the egg. The egg shivered and made some noises. The Dakibai egg is satisfied. The Dakibai egg wants the warmth of parents. It was really fussy. Come to think of it, Bihyung had said something. "I'm telling you just in case the egg hatches. Before the hatching, you have to carry the egg in your arms." "What, why?" "I don't know for sure, but that is how healthy Dakibis are born. Thus, I did it." I thought it was strange that the Dakibis believed in such a superstition, but there were reasons for superstitions in this world. It was because this was a world where all stories came true. I looked towards the factory in the distance. Since the two marquises had died, the Siswitz industrial complex had now turned completely towards the path of revolution. I broke both limbs and gave a good warning at the end, so the factory side wouldn't act rashly. I couldn't face them in my current state, so this situation would last for a few days. Aileen, close off the council's residence from now on. The nobles won't move for a while. Thus, we should take a break and get ready. I looked down at the egg, which was shaking more and more. From now on, the Duke wasn't the only problem. Once the channel opened, the real monsters would appear. I needed to prepare some things before then. Thanks to the help of the others, I set up a room in the council's residence with the proper temperature and humidity. Aileen checked my body's condition and sighed. "Don't move today. Your body is in bad shape." "Understood. Don't speak carelessly. You really almost died. This is the first time I've used 5 history-grade stories for the repair." I wasn't happy with the cost to my body. I could barely survive by using good stories. Still, it was better than dying. I still have the legendary stories, so it's fine. I confirmed the legendary stories I had acquired from killing the Marquises. The legendary story, God of the Dice, has been acquired. The legendary story, God of the Dice. According to Ways of Survival, the story was roughly like this. One of the stories held by the king of gambling. The owner of this story said he was about to freely choose the scale of the first dice roll. Sometimes it was unknown why certain stories were considered legendary grade. It might be a legendary grade, but how could it compare to my King of a Kingless World? Aileen had an astounded expression on her face as she opened her mouth. "Are you going to use a legendary grade story as a fragment to repair your body? Don't you know how much it is worth?" "No, how the hell have you survived so far, even with the protection of the story?" The protection of the story. It was a greeting often used by the Dakibai. "Stop nagging. In any case, I can't move today because of this child." I touched the egg in my arms. All future plans could be implemented if this child hatched well. Jang Haeyoung stared carefully at my arms and asked, "What is that?" "An egg." "Egg what egg?" "A Dakibai egg." Jang Haeyoung and the other group members had wide eyes at my words. "What, really?" I nodded and looked down at the egg. Every time the egg shook, the temporary channel was opened and closed. Number of constellations who have entered the channel, 1 person. It was currently a lonely number, but it wouldn't be long before the channel was full. I would surely make it happen. Wait, this is a real Dakibai egg. It's not a joke. Do I look like I'm joking? The channel is open because of this egg. Yes. Unlike the stunned Jang Haeyoung, Aileen was making a serious expression. Wait a minute, if this is really a Dakibai. I just want to give the demon world a chance. You can't remain as slaves of the industrial complexes forever. Aileen bit her lips at my words. In fact, she also knew. I pointed out something she was thinking in her heart. Are you afraid the next scenario will be worse? A scenario was always waiting after the current scenario. The scenario might be better than this or the worst one they had ever experienced. Aileen spoke like she didn't want to admit it. A world without it is the best. You need to think if an uncertain life is truly worse. I'm very thankful for your revolution, but you, Aileen stared into my eyes and paused. I didn't know what she saw or felt in this brief encounter. What are you doing this for? She ended up asking. Some people want to see the ending of the story. I replied as always. Do you intend to reach the end of the scenario? It is similar. Then Aileen muttered, a seeker of the end. I heard a story from the constellations of my home planet. There are constellations seeing the end of the stories. Seeker of the end. That reminded me, there were those guys in the star stream. It wasn't yet time to move in earnest, but the story was already circulating on Aileen's home planet. Aileen fell deep into thought while Jang Haeyoung opened his mouth. If that is a Dakibai, won't it become like the ones we know eventually? I won't let that happen. Not all Dakibis become the same streamers. Indeed, it is the same with people. How did you obtain the egg? I never heard anything about this from the Weni people. I hesitated as I wondered how to explain it. Suddenly, Han Myungo looked between the egg and I with strange eyes. It must have been hard. Childbirth is a painful thing. I think you are misunderstanding something. I didn't give birth to it. I understand. It seemed that an uncomfortable consensus was formed. I wanted to explain that I never received the Demon King's curse. Then the cracks in the egg became stronger and a dim light started leaking out. The egg's hatching is imminent. The moment I had been waiting for finally came. The star stream is watching the birth of a new streamer. I looked down at the creature that emerged along with Han Myungo, Jang Haeyoung, Mark, and Aileen. There was something wonderful about the birth of life. A small back could be seen through the breaking shell. Jang Haeyoung made a helpless expression as he stared at the back covered with white fur. I really hate the Dakibai. I feel it once again. However, this birth wasn't blessed. The newborn Dakibai cried with a wrinkled face. It was as if just being here was painful. I recalled one paragraph about the Dakibai king spoken of in Ways of Survival. Listen, they are born with fate and are inevitably poor people who have to live while loving the story. The newborn Dakibai kept crying. She was born in this world, and as long as there were stories in this world, she had to love it. Yes, I made you like this, thus blame me. The baby Dakibai is looking at you. The baby Dakibai recognizes you as a parent. The soul of the baby Dakibai is communicating with you. Then I heard a voice. Been waiting for a long time, Ajasi. Chapter 212, Hatching 3. The flow of time and space was becoming abnormal. Jang Haeyoung's lips moved very slowly while the voices were badly fragmented and didn't sound normal. It was like the whole world was in slow motion. Kim Dokja realized, this is the time of the Dakibus. In order to manage and judge a large number of channels at the same time, the Dakibus cognition rate was significantly faster than other creatures. I looked up at the air. A sphere of white light floated over a baby Dakibai with fluffy fur. It was a sphere I had seen before. It was the soul of Shin Yusung. It has been a while, Yusung. A translucent light appeared inside the sphere, and the silhouette of a person could be seen. The existence who wanted to save the world and who used to have faith in Yu Jonghyuk. The Shin Yusung of the 41st regression was right in front of me. You have earned an incredible achievement. You are the first human to hatch a Dakibai egg. You have acquired a new story. The story, Father of a Dakibai, has been acquired. Shin Yusung read my expression and spoke. Don't apologize, I chose this. Still, I'm sorry. Ajasi is incredible. Captain of the 41st regression wasn't like you. It isn't easy. I have a lot of work to do. Don't you need my help? I nodded and Shin Yusung smiled brightly. Can I do it well? You can do it well, I will help you. Only a person who reached the bottom of the scenario knew the weight of the scenario. This was why I believed in the 41st round Shin Yusung. Of course, this wasn't why Shin Yusung had to believe in me. Captain of the 41st regression was unsuccessful. Shin Yusung's voice was shaking slightly. There will be more horrible things going forward. I guess. Ajasi can't imagine the things that are waiting. I will go with you. Shin Yusung was silent for a moment. She seemed to be discern the meaning of my words and was measuring the depth of the last years. Either way, it would be painful for her. Soon, Shin Yusung opened her mouth. I won't be able to remember Ajasi right after I'm born. I know. Don't make too much of a fool of yourself. I'll try. Her smile was brilliant. In the silence that was like calm music, Shin Yusung continued to speak. I have few good memories of the scenario. She sounded indifferent, but it was sincere because of the indifference. I listened to her and recalled the story of Ways of Survival. I thought of the stories of Shin Yusung that I knew. It couldn't be fully explained even with 100 or 1,000 sentences. Still, if I ever have something to say. I didn't know if I had time to worry about this. I might have read Ways of Survival and could read her thoughts with Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, but I didn't understand the pain that the 41st round Shin Yusung had endured. This time I will talk to Ajasi. Thus, I could only reply to her in one way. Thank you. I bit my lips to try and conceal my heart. A bright string of light rose and the flow of time gradually returned to its original state. The first channel of the 73rd Demon Realm has opened. Channel name, by 90594. The fragmented sounds returned and I could hear Jang Haeyoung's voice. What will you name the child? This was what he said. I had been very worried because of the name. The baby Dakibai was looking at me. I stared into her eyes and spoke quietly. Channel manager, BU. Did she know it was her name? The baby Dakibai reached out to me. I grabbed the small and fluffy hand, and it felt like the baby Dakibai smiled at me. Shin Yusung was crying. She often cried after escaping from Seoul Dome. It happened when she fell asleep after a hard day or when she opened the attributes window and gazed at her constellation support. Shin Yusung's tears flowed out unknowingly. It was always Lee Gilyoung who spoke to Shin Yusung during this time. Hey, why are you crying again? Dr. Hyung likes mature people. Shin Yusung's red and swollen eyes flashed at the words. Get lost. Hyung will be back soon. Didn't you see? He left while saying, we will meet again, Lee Gilyoung. He never said that. He told me, surely you heard it. Lee Gilyoung saw Lee Jihai standing in the back and his eyes narrowed. What are you smiling at? Something cute. Shin Yusung, Lee Gilyoung and Lee Jihai were on the way to the place they promised to meet after getting rid of the monsters that appeared as disasters in the 12th scenario. The place where they promised to meet the other party members was Seongnam City. Since they decided to meet again here, the other party members would soon gather. As Lee Jihai and Lee Gilyoung bickered, Shin Yusung opened her attributes window. The link to your sponsor has been disconnected. This was the message that kept appearing in Shin Yusung's attributes window shortly after leaving Seoul Dome. Lee Gilyoung didn't like Shin Yusung's somber face and spoke again. Hey, look at this coin. What is it? If I throw the coins and it is heads, Dr. Hyung is alive. Lee Gilyoung pulled out a 101 coin and Shin Yusung pouted. You have done this before. Let's try it again. Do what you like. Ajasi won't suddenly appear in front of you. Flipping a coin. It was the action done whenever Shin Yusung and Lee Gilyoung became uneasy. How many times has Dr. Hyung died so far? 41 times. How many times did he live? 59 times. If a heads emerged, Kim Dokja would come back to live. If a tails emerged, Kim Dokja was dead. Lee Jihai heard this story and asked, are you sure you want Ajasi to really be alive? Lee Gilyoung threw the coin in the air. At almost the same time, 3 pairs of eyes followed the coin. The skeptical Lee Ji also focused on watching the coin. There was a clink as the coin fell to the ground and moved twirled. 3 people stared breathlessly at the coin. Heads, tails, then. Heads, look, what did I say? Lee Gilyoung's confident voice was heard as the coin stopped on the heads, which contained a portrait of Admiral Yi Sun-sin. Even Lee Jihai felt slightly better after seeing the result. However, Lee Jihai knew this result wasn't due to chance. The constellation, Maritime War God, has consumed some probability. Lee Jihai smiled bitterly. Her sponsor had been losing power recently, and it was because he wasted his probability on this. Nevertheless, she couldn't say anything. The constellation, Maritime War God, is looking at the children with sad eyes. People needed hope, and perhaps the constellations were the same. Suddenly, Lee Jihai wanted to be mischievous. She picked up the coin that had fallen and opened her mouth. Since Ajasi is alive, let's try something else. What is it? Lee Gilyoung spoke half-heartedly, like he was displeased with her intervention. Lee Jihai ignored him and kept speaking. Does Dr. Ajasi like you better, or does he like Yusung more? Of course it is me, Lee Gilyoung shouted. What, have you forgotten the garter belt incident? My liking was higher. Hey, that. Then a shrill voice was heard from behind them, a 15-year-old schoolgirl. The owner of the voice was Shin Yusung, Lee Jihai, or Lee Gilyoung. They saw 2 girls approaching in the distance. They were Han Soo-young and Yu Sanga, who came back from fighting monsters in Gwashan. Lee Jihai recognized the owner of the voice. A 15-year-old schoolgirl. He said that to the Black Flame Dragon and took a skill. As they were going to reach Lee Jihai and the children, another woman appeared from the Suwon direction. She was a slender woman with a long sword hanging from her waist. What are you talking about? It was Judge of Destruction Young Hee-won, who had been in charge of Soo-won. Hee-won Unni, Lee Ji-hai rushed towards Young Hee-won with delight. However, Young Hee-won's state wasn't good. Her armor was severely damaged and her thighs and forearms were covered with cuts. It was unthinkable when considering Young Hee-won's strength. The monster species weren't that strong. Are you okay? Did a different monster appear? That isn't it. There were some problems with my stigma. Stigma? Young Hee-won was about to explain only to lightly shake her head. Instead, she looked towards Han Soo-young. Han Soo-young SSI, please keep talking. What were you saying? Maybe it was because of Young Hee-won's intense interest, but Han Soo-young instantly started to talk about what happened. Lee Ji-hai listened to the story and wondered. I'm not sure what you are saying. Who is the 15-year-old schoolgirl? People's gazes focused on Han Soo-young. Han Soo-young spoke brief gibberish before declaring in a slightly excited voice. Kim Dokcha, he is alive. How did you come to that conclusion? Why? Anyone who heard Han Soo-young's reasoning would think it was nonsense. At this moment, Young Hee-won interrupted. I don't know the connection between Kim Dokcha and the 15-year-old schoolgirl, but it doesn't seem very likely. Lee Ji-hai asked with an absurd expression. Unni, you understood what she said just now. Did you learn a new skill? It isn't likely. However, I do think Dokcha SSI is alive. The party members gulped at Young Hee-won's words. Kim Dokcha, was he really alive? Young Hee-won took a pained breath and started speaking. I suddenly can't use my stigma. Huh? What did this mean? What did Young Hee-won's inability to use her stigma have to do with Kim Dokcha surviving? Young Hee-won immediately replied to their question. My sponsor has suddenly disappeared. Your sponsor? Young Hee-won nodded and looked at her attributes window. The link to your sponsor has been disconnected. It was the first time she had seen this. Thanks to this, she was unable to borrow the power of her sponsor for the moment. However, that wasn't the only message. I found Kim Dokcha. At this time, a person arrived in the 73rd Demon Realm. You have arrived in the 16th personal scenario area. This scenario has a time limit. Be sure to return to the main scenario within the given time. The moment he stepped through the portal, a bleak horizon of stories and mountains of garbage story fragments unfolded. Yu Jonghyuk frowned at the sight and asked, is this really the right place? Then a small angel doll sitting on his shoulder nodded. Do you have to answer through this toy? The constellation, demon-like Judge of Fire, says it can't be helped because there are no channels here. Chapter 213, Hatching 4. Yu Jonghyuk's wrinkles deepened as he stared at the symbolic figure shaped like a doll. How are you sending an indirect message without a channel? The constellation, demon-like Judge of Fire, says it is possible if the symbolic body is in contact with the incarnation. Uriel's symbolic body was the doll on Yu Jonghyuk's shoulder. Yu Jonghyuk gently poked the symbolic figure with a finger. Is it okay to do this? The constellation, demon-like Judge of Fire, says it will be okay as long as it isn't caught by a dakibai. No, I'm not talking about the dakibai. Uriel initially didn't understand what he was saying. Yu Jonghyuk pointed to the side of the doll. The doll cocked her head and then covered her mouth with both eyes. The constellation, demon-like Judge of Fire, is deeply moved by the heart of the incarnation, Yu Jonghyuk. The constellation, demon-like Judge of Fire, says it is a bit painful. There were weak sparks around Uriel's symbolic body. It was because the demon world was a taboo for her, an archangel. The demon world was the domain of the demon kings. Uriel was taking an unnatural risk and forced to bear the brunt of her probability being exhausted. Uriel moved to clinging to his arms and Yu Jonghyuk asked her, why are you going so far to look for Kim Dokcha? The constellation, demon-like Judge of Fire, is asking if it isn't the same for you. There seems to be a misunderstanding. In fact, the demon world was originally a place where he would have never come. The difficulty here was incomparable to other scenarios of the same rank. It was comforting that this was the 73rd demon realm. There were no demon kings and the ruler would be a duke at most. This much was worth a try. Above all, he was much stronger than he was at the same point in his previous regressions. I just don't like people impersonating me. It doesn't matter if it is Kim Doksha or not. The constellation, demon-like Judge of Fire, is laughing. There are also many usable items in the demon world. The constellation, demon-like Judge of Fire, is laughing loudly. Do it one more time, and I will rip apart your body. Yu Jonghyuk turned his head and gazed at the wide horizon. Perhaps that bastard was somewhere in this desolate world. In this silent world, Yu Jonghyuk finally started moving. The Siswitz Industrial Complex. The atmosphere of the Duke's office was much more unusual than usual, as Earl Psylocke sweated while reporting. Therefore, we plan to control access into and out of the industrial complex while the revolution is ongoing. Psylocke's heart sank several times as the face of the Gylabat envoy distorted in front of him. This person might be Gylabat's envoy, but he wasn't the one in charge of the delegation. Explosive Ambrose. He was a marquis of the Gylabat industrial complex and the most prominent candidate to be the next Duke of the 73rd Demon Realm. Psylocke gasped for breath as he saw the fire glowing in Ambrose's eyes. He might have fled if it hadn't been for Duke Siswitz standing at the window and looking outside leisurely. That's why I am asking the Gylabat envoys to stay here for a while. Have you finished speaking? Yep, then I will go. Psylocke hurriedly opened the office door and ran away. Meanwhile, Ambrose took a few deep breaths to control his temper. It was an annoying situation, but he couldn't act as usual. It was because the strongest existence in the 73rd demon world, Siswitz, was behind him. Duke Siswitz stared out the window for a while before smiling. That's what happened. What am I supposed to do? I'm sorry, but you can't leave. Please stay in the Siswitz industrial complex for the time being. In the end, Ambrose exploded. Don't you know these words can cause diplomatic issues? You're too sensitive. It is just a protection measure for the envoys of the Alliance. Is it because of the revolutionary? 7 executioners and 2 marquises have died. It has been a long time since this happened. The last phase of the revolutionary scenario would start when all executioners in the complex died. Strictly speaking, Duke Siswitz was in a crisis right now. Unlike his words, there was no sense of crisis in Duke Siswitz's expression. Ambrose didn't like this contradiction and complained, "A revolutionary appearing at this time, you must want to save face, Duke Siswitz." Really? I think it is fun. It has been 30 years since a revolutionary emerged in Siswitz. Sometimes this event is needed. You are speaking like the constellations. Why not? The story isn't only related to the constellations. Ambrose would have scoffed if a normal incarnation had said this. However, Duke Siswitz was qualified to say such things. He wasn't comparable to the upper-grade constellation, but Siswitz was a monster who had ruled the 73rd Demon Realm for 400 years. It is good to have as many stories as possible before the beginning of the Demon King competition. The more powerful the revolutionary that appeared, the better it is for me. He never even thought about being hit by the revolution. Why are you so confident that you can stop the revolution? Ambrose asked. Why do you think? Ambrose's eyes sank at the question. Maybe it was an obvious story. Siswitz had lost 2 marquises in this incident. I hope you won't betray Gylabat. Haha, who said that? I'm telling you this personally. I will also give you a piece of advice. Do you think that Duke Gylabat can become the Demon King? Ambrose was a bit upset by the words. Siswitz didn't give him time to think. Or do you think Meladin and Birkin can become the new Demon King? I can't answer this question. No, you can answer it. It is because everyone knows who is the strongest of the 4 dukes in the 73rd Demon Realm. Ambrose gulped. This calm declaration could sound so scary. Once again, the oldest duke of the 73rd Demon Realm couldn't be ignored. It won't be easy. Meladin has joined hands with Vedas. He isn't the only one who can borrow the power of the constellations. These words. Duke Siswitz stared at the sky outside the window instead of answering. The Dakibus will come soon, then what will happen next? Now the night sky was completely dark. However, soon there would be many stars in the night sky. Then the other demon kings would show up as a response to the emergence of the constellations. Marquis Ambrose felt a heart-shaking sensation. Finally, the 73rd demon realm would become a battleground for a proper scenario. Is there a channel liaison yet? I put in a request to the Bureau. At this moment, Ambrose realized why Siswitz didn't look for support. Once the Dakibus appeared and the full-fledged scenarios began, the constellations would gather towards the bigger events. Suddenly, some thoughts ran through his head. It wouldn't be bad for there to be a small entertainment before the full-fledged Demon King competition begins. The constellations love slaughter. Is that why you are leaving the revolution alone? Siswitz stared at the smoke with a strange smile. Ambrose sighed bitterly. You were born evil. Every conflict in this world was a commodity. Now Siswitz was selling the lives of the many civilians in the industrial complex to seek the attention of the constellations. Thank you for the compliment. Ambrose shook his head like he was tired. If he planned this production, then Duke Siswitz would surely be preparing for a greater blow. It wasn't difficult to predict what would happen in the industrial complex. I can see movement in the factory. The most powerful story weapon possessed by the Dukes, the factory. Duke Siswitz nodded. I have already prepared it, so you will see sooner or later. Anticipation filled Ambrose's eyes. The most powerful person in the 73rd demon realm. It wasn't a common opportunity to see him in action. Then, the BY-90594 channel has been created in the Siswitz Industrial Complex area. Ambrose heard the message and stood up with amazement. Did you call the Dakibus already? Once he saw the expression on Duke Siswitz's face, Ambrose realized this wasn't part of the plan. The door of the office opened and somebody ran in. Duke, I'm sorry, but I have an urgent report. It was Earl Psylocke who previously fled from this place. Siswitz quickly managed his facial expression and replied, Tell me. His report was probably related to the emergence of the new channel. However, unexpected words emerged from Psylocke's mouth. The factory isn't operating hard enough. Duke Siswitz made an embarrassed expression. What does that mean? Didn't I tell you to replenish it? That, it looks like all the civilians who came to work have stolen the story fragments. Ambrose noticed how things were progressing and said, It seems this revolutionary is using his head. Perhaps the Dakibus moved first because of him. That is impossible. The negotiations with the Bureau haven't ended yet. Duke Siswitz frowned at the unexpected situation and immediately gave instructions. Send the supervisors and slaves to the horizon. Have them collect more story fragments. I have already sent them, by the way. Duke Siswitz hadn't realized that the report wasn't over. Earl Psylocke's shoulders hunched over like he was afraid of how the Duke would react. I lost contact with the supervisor who went out to collect the story fragments. The horizon near the Siswitz industrial complex. Jang Haeyoung kicked the body of the dead supervisor and said, It seems that the Duke has been preparing for quite a while, ordering a collection of this scale. It was an extra-large collection with thousands of slaves mobilized. The situation was resolved, but it would have been dangerous if we had been a bit later. It was impossible to launch a full-scale war against the factory when my incarnation body wasn't yet intact. Things would have become worse if these story fragments entered the factory. You are good. I glanced at Han Mungo beside me. He knew the Duke would move in this way. If Han Mungo hadn't been the spy, I wouldn't have guessed the exact timing to put the plan into action. Han Mungo was elated by my praise and laughed. Who am I? Aren't I the brain of Mino Soft? You can use that as a modifier if you ever become a constellation. I smiled at Han Mungo. At first, I didn't like being on the same side as this person. Now I thought it wasn't a bad choice. Bring the slaves over here. I will start repairing those who are still sane first. Now that I had decided to wage war properly, I could feel something different from Aileen and the citizens. I watched them and controlled my heart. The baby Dakibai who looked like cotton candy sat on my shoulder and cried out, "Bot!" Her memories hadn't been recovered, but every Dakibai had the instincts of a streamer. They filled in the scenarios where there should be a story. A new sub-scenario has arrived. The sub-scenario "Liberate the Slaves" has started. Thank you. I lightly stroked her head and Bu shouted, "Dot." It might not be possible for me to enter the main scenario, but I could receive a sub-scenario whenever there was an opportunity. It might be a temporary measure, but if I kept building up sub-scenarios, I would be able to recover enough to face the Duke. Kim Daksha thought, there is nothing urgent. Time is still on my side. I now need to thoroughly prepare to safely pass the demon world scenario. I sincerely thought this, at least until I heard an unexpected message. A new constellation has entered the by 90594 channel. Chapter 214, Hatching 5. A new constellation. Already. It was earlier than the expected timing. I thought there would only be subscriptions after a few more incidents. A constellation is looking at the incarnations without revealing their modifier. It didn't seem to be a constellation I had already met. I was a bit disappointed. I was hoping it would be Secretive Plotter or Abyssal Black Flame Dragon. Did you hear the message just now? What message? I heard an indirect message. I didn't know if it was rich or not, but the new constellation was sprinkling indirect messages from the beginning. Bu shouted from her position on my body. Maybe Bu was receiving many coins right now. It was natural to be amazed. Now she knew how to make coins as a Dakibai. Kim Daksha thought, I hope they are a good person. The inclination of the initial subscribers would determine the nature of the channel. The stimulus and difficulty of the scenario would be determined if the initial constellations were incarnation seekers or fun seekers. After all, every detail that the Dakibus couldn't determine were made in response to the desires of the subscribers. In fact, this was what I was most worried about. The 41st regression Shin Yusung had already suffered countless injuries from the Dakibus. In order to continue the scenario in the future, Bu must constantly face the desires of the constellations. But I placed my hand on Bu's head. A constellation who hasn't revealed their modifier is revealing their modifier. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, disapproves of the incarnations here. I frowned at the message. This was a bad start. I remembered hearing about the Nouveau Richer Snake Boss in Ways of Survival. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is bored with the development of the scenario. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is dissatisfied with the naive development of the Dakibai. Nouveau Richer Snake Boss. His hobby was to enter the channels containing weak constellations, flash coins around, and ruin the scenario. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, wants stimulation. I remembered Ways of Survival talking about how many channels had decreased subscribers or were completely destroyed due to him. He was only mentioned in passing, but now I had to face him directly. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, doesn't want the survival of the removal slaves. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, says everyone should cooperate to kill the enemies. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, declares that he will donate coins to anyone who kills a removal slave. The citizens started to look around at the messages. Some people looked confused at what this meant, and others looked hesitant. Some people were panic-stricken as bad memories popped up. However, some of them were secretly taking out their weapons. Jang Haeyoung noticed it and screamed, "Wait, what are you doing right now?" He was one step late. Once they saw one person taking out a weapon, the actions of the citizens became faster. 1, 2, 3. The number of weapons increased. "Hey, are you serious? This isn't it." Mark seized a citizen who was approaching a removal slave. Just because they are removal slaves doesn't mean they are lost. Some still have their minds. Most of them were those who sold their souls to their duke. Not all of them are like that, don't you know? Aren't they dead anyway? This is great. The citizens were blinded by coins, and drew their blades. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is excited about the intensified conflict. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, declares that he will donate 3,000 coins to the Incarnation who kills the most removal slaves. 3,000 coins. It was a luxurious sum in the industrial complex where coins were precious. Let's just kill them, we have to live. Right, chairman, just kill everyone and go back. The balance of voices was leaning sharply. The number of citizens who took out weapons increased. Mark once again shouted to stop their greed. They were once citizens. If you act this way, how are you different from the nobles? Get out of the way if we don't act right. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is enjoying the dispute between citizens. The moment Mark was pushed to his ass by the struggle, another message followed. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, declares that he will donate 300 coins to an incarnation who kills a citizen. The citizens were momentarily stunned. They glanced at each other and hurriedly moved away from each other. Wait a minute. I thought I knew what they were thinking. Yes, the scenario was originally like this. One day, the citizens of this place had performed the first scenario, pointing blades at each other and killing to survive. The citizens glanced at each other while holding weapons. A constellation spoke a few words, and the bonds of the citizens gathered in the name of revolution were gradually dimming. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is delighted with the reaction from the incarnations. My hatred of the constellations, which I had forgotten for a while, revived again. Once upon a time, I might have been like these citizens. I would have played along with what the constellations for 1 or 2 coins, adapted to the story of the constellations and become disillusioned, saying, "This is unavoidable." Kim Dokja thought. It was unavoidable. There is nothing unavoidable. I took a step back and completely crushed the floor. I used this force to jump into the crowd of citizens. Then I grabbed the neck of the citizen who had strongly pushed Mark. Kyuk. 300 coins per body. Kyuk are revolutionary. 300 coins, don't you think that is too cheap? The citizen I was holding struggled, but I tightened my grip instead of releasing my hand. Soon after, the pale citizen dropped his weapon and the surrounding citizens screamed. Once the citizen was about to suffocate, I laid him down roughly on the ground. Their terrified eyes watched me. 300 coins per person. How much would it be if I kill everyone here? If you kill the removal slaves, he will give 3,000 coins. So altogether it is 13,000 coins. Indeed, it is hard to ignore. 13,000 coins. Most of the citizens here had never seen such an amount. But don't you know, you can't change anything with 13,000 coins. At best, it will be a few vague skills and some equipment. The citizens' eyes started shaking. Those who had never used the Dakibai bag wouldn't know. 13,000 coins were just a petty amount of cash for the high-ranking constellations. What could they do in this world with that much money? I looked down at the citizen on the ground. Then, what are you going to do next? Why, yes. What will you do with the 13,000 coins after killing everyone? Emotions slowly crossed the faces of the citizens. Fear, and I. The citizens murmured in voices that sounded like they had fallen into an abyss. And nothing. I watched the bewildered faces of the citizens. In fact, I knew they didn't do this with a clear purpose. Perhaps the citizens themselves didn't understand why they were trying to gather coins. They just had the compulsion to survive and collect more coins than other incarnations. The scenarios made the incarnations slaves to the story. In this heavy silence, the citizens realized what they had been planning to do and burst out crying. Our revolutionary. I got up, ignoring their eyes. Then I spoke casually. Since a channel has opened, more constellations will come in the future. The eyes of the citizens staring at me were shaking with a different light. Don't sell your stories for just 1 or 2 coins. If you want to sell them, do it for the right value. I didn't know how much of my words had been communicated to the people. I wasn't good at talking. Even so, this was all I could do. The people around me bit their lips with sad faces. Then they looked like they had decided to do something. The citizens dropped their heads and started to put away their weapons. None of them opened their mouths, but their expressions alone were an answer. However, not all of them accepted my words. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is staring at you. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, feels a strong rage towards you. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, has requested a bounty scenario. A bounty scenario. Yes, there was something like that. It was a damn scenario that was invoked at the request of the constellations. Revolutionary. The surprised citizens glanced at me with fearful faces. The target was obvious if a bounty scenario was triggered now. At this time, BU rose from my head and floated in the air. But other Docubus would have willingly accepted the bounty scenario, but BU couldn't do that. BU's body swelled up as if to refuse the request. But then faint sparks flowed over BU's small body. Bebot Bayat. At this moment, I realized what would happen. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, has requested a bounty scenario. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, has requested a bounty scenario. BU was now struggling with her instincts. Unlike common misunderstandings, the Docubus don't deliberately produce stimulating scenes. It was out of instinct to meet the demands of a constellation subscribed to a channel. The more innate the streamer, the more powerful these instincts are. It is an instinct to create a scenario that more beings desire. All Docubi live with such instincts. BU was still a baby, and it was more difficult for her to overcome such instincts. I reached out and lightly grabbed BU. It's okay. There isn't only one subscriber to this channel. The constellation, Demon King of Salvation, doesn't agree with the invocation of the bounty scenario. The sparks scattered instantly at my fingertips. The bounty scenario request has been denied. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is astonished. I raised my head towards the air. Snake Boss, the story that you want isn't here. I gazed at the faint constellations shining in the night sky and declared in a nonchalant voice, I'm busy, so get lost. Chapter 215, Real Revolutionary 1. At this moment, I thought it was a bit of an overkill. I meant to say something similar, but I didn't mean to provoke him so much. Maybe I was too accustomed to giving cider to individual constellations. It was laughable. I was Yu Jonghyuk, and I didn't have anyone giving me coins now. Didn't you hear it? The Demon King of Salvation. Jang Haeyoung ran to my side and exclaimed, Look at the constellation who joined out channel, a person from Earth. I was about to tell him that I was the Demon King of Salvation when I remembered something that he said previously. He already has a girlfriend. I shouldn't. Instead, I looked up at the sky where the light was shining. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, has jumped exceedingly high. This jerk must be pissed off, but he couldn't go on a rampage. A low-ranking constellation like the Nouveau Richer Snake Boss didn't have the guts or enough probability to make trouble in the demon world. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is furious that a mere incarnation has destroyed him. What incarnation? Who killed this guy in the original novel? It couldn't be Yu Jonghyuk. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is indignant that a constellation he has never heard of is opposing his will. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is looking around for the Demon King of Salvation. This guy didn't know that I was the Demon King of Salvation. Well, it didn't matter. As long as he cared about the Demon King of Salvation, half of my purpose was achieved. Kim Dokja thought, I must gather constellations to this channel. This way, I can gain the upper hand in the Demon King selection, which would follow after the revolutionary scenario. For this to happen, I needed word to spread about this channel. Even so, it was dangerous to blindly recruit constellations. If too many powerful people entered from the beginning, BU would find it hard to handle, and it could be troublesome for me. At this moment, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss was becoming upset in the channel. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, starts to question the nearby constellations about the Demon King of Salvation. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is surprised to hear the rumors about the Demon King of Salvation. He was a low-grade guy among the top people of this world. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, claims to have seen the Demon King of Salvation. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is appealing against the accusations of the constellations pouring towards him. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, claims to have really seen the Demon King of Salvation. Therefore, the narrative-grade constellations didn't believe his words. In other words, the story only reached the arrogant lower-grade constellations. It meant the Nouveau Richer Snake Boss was a perfect fit for collecting such constellations. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is gathering his gang. It was as I expected. New constellations have entered the By 90594 channel. If secretive plotter was in the same channel, he would have clearly sent me a message of admiration at my ploy. It felt a bit nostalgic. The newly entered constellations are revealing their modifiers. The constellation, Nay-Leading Rat, is looking for the fingernails of fallen incarnations. The constellation Dog Who Threw Himself into the Flames is curious about the channel's incarnations. Since there was a series of animal modifiers, he really had called his friends. Nay-Leading Rat and Dog Who Threw Himself into the Flames, they were modifiers that I knew were unknown even without looking at ways of survival. These bad guys were also constellations. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is warning the Demon King of Salvation. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, declares that this channel has been taken over by the 12 Zodiacs Nebula. What was this? I had seen the 12 Zodiacs in passing in ways of survival. They were a nebula, but they weren't very cohesive. In addition, the majority of members were low-grade constellations. There wouldn't be a problem even if they became hostile to me. Kim Dokja thought, first, the number of subscribers has increased. Next would be to sort them. The larger the channel, the more loaches that obscured the water. Now that I wasn't free to use my status, I needed a constellation to take charge of quality control. It needed to be a constellation with a strong power but was moderately decent. They should be capable of crushing other constellations. Where could I find such a person? In fact, I already had the answer. Jang Haeyoung, what are you doing? Jang Haeyoung, who was typing something into the air, glanced at me with surprise. The unidentified wall is surprised. It seemed he was doing something similar. My eyes narrowed as I said, "You will die if you tell the other constellations about the Demon King of Salvation." I just wanted to boast that I heard the message. Then you will be punished. The Demon King of Salvation is a very, very scary man. Jang Haeyoung jumped and glanced up at the sky. He thought that the Demon King of Salvation might be looking at him from somewhere. Fortunately, there were no indications of unusual movements in the channel. Jang Haeyoung hadn't spread his nonsense yet. Jang Haeyoung noticed my glance and asked, "You know the Demon King of Salvation?" "A little bit." "Are you friends?" I didn't know if we were friends or not. "It is enough that he gave me a message to tell you." "What is it?" "He is looking at you." I thought saying this would be better. In any case, I had to take advantage of his power from now on. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is looking for a place to relieve his anger. The constellation Nay-Leading Rat is curious about you. The indirect messages appeared in the air one after another. Duke Siswitz listened to the messages for a while before opening his mouth with a frown. "Gather all the nobles at night." "Huh, but you understood." The subordinate quickly escaped from the office, and Duke Siswitz placed a new cigar and placed it in his mouth. He looked slightly nervous due to the indirect messages of the constellations. I don't know who opened the channel. However, I can't let that opportunity go. It wasn't a formal channel. However, he could still take advantage of the channel to start the competition in the most advantageous position in the demon world. The other dukes haven't yet obtained a channel for broadcast. The modifiers of snake and rat seemed wrong, but they were still constellations. He didn't know the details, but this situation was a great opportunity for him to become a demon king. Marquis Ambrose watched the situation and asked, "Are you planning to face the revolutionary in a situation where the factory isn't operating? Once all the remaining executioners are dead, the revolutionary will gain the power to kill you. A ruler who lost all his subjects would be vulnerable to a revolution. That was the planned evolution of this scenario. However, Duke Siswitz didn't blink at all. Of course not, if the person who showed up now is the real revolutionary. What? By the way, have you decided which side you will be on? Ambrose looked surprised. I'm a Marquis of Gilabat. Duke Siswitz smiled and Ambrose realized the meaning of side. Are you? Ambrose's back was soaked with sweat while there was a very short conflict in his head. The Duke who obtained the first channel would be overwhelming advantageous in the selection competition. Many constellations would soon flock to this channel. In addition, Duke Siswitz had the most powerful story in the 73rd demon world. Ambrose's worries didn't last long. I greet the new demon king of the demon world. The demon made a decision. Duke Siswitz nodded as Ambrose slowly knelt down. I entrusted the removal slaves to Aileen and Mark before asking BU to disrupt the broadcast channel for a while. It was to prepare for any possible problems. I didn't want the animal friends to hear what happened from now on. Jang Haeyoung, how many people are you talking to now? Jang Haeyoung looked me in the eye and replied, 3 people. One is the Black Flame Dragon. Who are the remaining 2? Actually it might be 5. 5 people. To be precise, it is 9, but 9 people. If I add those who took longer to reply, there is 15 altogether. There were several distinctive features of the unidentified wall. One of them was the chat function that Jang Haeyoung opened not long ago. It was the ability to send messages to anyone with a modifier in the star stream. However, having this ability didn't mean everyone could use it like Jang Haeyoung. You talked to 15 people in this short amount of time. Well, it wasn't that hard. It was hard for me to talk to even one person. He was a really great multitasker. In short, 15 constellations and transcendents were talking to this guy, those people with strong pride. I wondered how it was possible, but this was Jang Haeyoung's true power. It was because of this power that Jang Haeyoung was able to build a force of transcendence. Jang Haeyoung watched my face and asked, "By the way, why are you asking?" I hesitated for a moment. This choice was very important. If I made a bad choice, my hard-earned channel could become ruined in an instant. I thought for a moment before slowly opening my mouth. I'd like to call somebody. Who? I hesitated to reply. I wasn't sure if my choice was correct or not. Kim Daksha thought, the one I will call now is beyond my control. It was really hard to get here. A damn scenario was a scenario, but the ones who really bothered me were the constellations. Those who wanted the bounty scenario were easy. When I thought about it, I came to the demon world because of my fate. Even now, I couldn't sleep when thinking of that time. After all these efforts, I came to this distant stage and opened a new channel. Now should I call one of them to this place? Chapter 216, Real Revolutionary 2. What aren't you saying? Obviously, there were good constellations in this world. They were the constellations I read about in Ways of Survival. After Ways of Survival being a reality, there were some constellations that I reevaluated. Still, it didn't change that their essence was a constellation. I didn't know what my expression was like, but Jang Haeyoung had worried eyes. Is something wrong? No, nothing like that. Then why are you worrying? I was somehow hesitant to speak and shook my head lightly. Jang Haeyoung stared straight at me and stated, I would like to hear it. There was something familiar about this, and I couldn't help smiling. I closely examined Jang Haeyoung's face. A sharp nose on pure white skin, clear and deep eyes below eyebrows that were drawn in a soft line. A faint guilt filled my heart. He is a kid who likes stories. Because Yu Jonghyuk is a good person, this person should taste the bitterness of reality. Jonghyuk doesn't listen to people. The other person should be a good listener. The result of all the comments I made was now in front of me. He had eyes to see the world, a nose to breath and ears to hear the story. Perhaps it was because of guilt, but I spoke my first words unknowingly. There are people who think bad things. People? I nodded and continued. They are overall bad people. They bully or gossip about others and even commit some terrible things. Jang Haeyoung listened to the story and asked me, "Do you hate the people you are talking about?" I thought so, but I don't know. I didn't know if I was serious or not. Some people were better than I thought, and some people acted differently than what I knew. The countless words of ways of survival that I read in the past flowed through my mind. What is real about them? What is reality and what is fake? I don't know very well. Jang Haeyoung silently listened despite my vague wording. How much time passed? Jang Haeyoung thought about something. It's hard to understand what exactly is troubling you, so you want to know more about these people. What? They seem like bad people, but there might be some good people. Well, isn't that your expectations? No. Why did it sound so romantic? There was a backlash, but when I thought about it, this might be the problem. Jang Haeyoung nodded and said, "Every now and then, too, you have to talk to the people." It would be useless to talk. Why? Just. I couldn't explain it well. It was a helpless feeling that couldn't be described. However, it was when a person became most helpless that they were the most truthful. I think there is a huge wall. The fourth wall is looking at you. You and I are talking like this, but we're not really communicating. There is no such thing as communication in this world. The unidentified wall is looking at the fourth wall. Kim Dokcha thought, maybe reality or the novel is all the same. I've read it for so long and I still don't know. Maybe I will never know. I felt like I was mistaken and that the moment I spoke these words, everything would change. This optical illusion was broken by Jang Haeyoung's words. I might be different from others, but of course, there is no such thing. What? Everyone has a wall and communication is impossible. That's obvious. I couldn't believe the friendly Jang Haeyoung thought so. It was a bit surprising. Then Jang Haeyoung continued, "However, we still have to talk. Even if there is a huge wall, there is a person behind that wall. What can we say when there is a wall? Right on the wall." My mouth dropped open at the brazen words. If you shit or pee, you will leave something on the wall. That way the other party will recognize it. Why would you do such a thing? The other person is beyond the wall anyway. Still, you should leave a mark. Does that make sense? There is no apparent meaning. Then, it is just important that you left it. The other party won't know, so why? At least the wall has changed. I was speechless for a moment. Jang Haeyoung spoke in a resolute voice. Then one day someone might read it. I stared at Jang Haeyoung. Jang Haeyoung, who was born into this world because of my greed, lived a life unrelated to me. Maybe he became a better person than I thought. I laughed with some bitterness. I have one question. Huh? Did you talk to the constellations in this way? That. Judging by his hesitation, I must be correct. I had a bit of understanding of the minds of the constellations. They were the heaviest, but at the same time, loneliest beings in the universe. They were writers as well as those who watched the stories. Jang Haeyoung would have listened to them as he did to me. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is looking at the cheeky incarnation. Jang Haeyoung looked up at the air at the same time. Thanks to BU's interference, the Nouveau Richer Snake Boss couldn't find my location for a while. Of course, this didn't last long. Jang Haeyoung asked in an uneasy voice, "Is that bastard thinking of staying here?" Perhaps. He had been embarrassed and was probably determined to ruin the channel. I thought for a moment before finally making a decision. Jang Haeyoung was right. Even if there was a wall, I had to write something on this wall. This was despite the fact that it might change what was originally written. I didn't want to be a person who only read. Jang Haeyoung, can you contact this person? Once I thought about it, I had been acting as a reader the whole time. In order to see the ending that I wanted, I had to create a new story. In fact, I had already warped reality. I just didn't know yet who would read it. Who? I didn't know if the constellations would comply with my suggestions. Now that I opened a channel, if that person helped, the revolutionary scenario would end without any problems. Then a message appeared in the air. The fifth night has arrived. Sinister flute sounds were heard. I looked around the industrial complex. In the raging fire, people were screaming. My expression hardened and I spoke towards the scattered Aileen and Mark. Gather all the citizens. The Duke was driven into a corner. It was obvious after the fourth night was over. The factory's operating power had been cut off by the kidnapped slaves. Thus, the Duke couldn't come out for the moment. However, the Duke led the nobles and emerged on this night. Kim Daksha thought, what is he intending? My mind was a bit complicated due to the variable of a new constellation intervening. In addition, the constellation I called hadn't come yet. It's fine, let's think positively. This might be an opportunity. Yes, I didn't need to have a weak mind. I was now a constellation. I had done well so far and there wouldn't be a problem. Jang Haeyoung, take care of the executioners. Absolutely don't get involved with the other nobles. I know. I ran through the streets using Way of the Wind and reached the place where the biggest fire was burning. How long had I been running? I soon saw a demon standing on the spire of a broken building. Are you the revolutionary? It was a long-haired demon engulfed in red flames. My face was tingling from the heat that emerged from his whole body. It was a stinging heat wave. I looked at the yellow flames and knew what this power was. There was only one person who used this type of story in the 73rd demon realm. Marquis Amberose. He was the most powerful noble in the 73rd demon realm after the dukes. He was someone I would have hesitated to bump into before I became a constellation. However, Amberose's expression was weird. I am Ambrose, not Amberose. Ah, I got his name wrong. I might be Kim Daksha, but even I couldn't memorize the name of extras. Amberose kept muttering like his pride was hurt. You aren't fleeing despite knowing me. I thought you were someone with good knowledge, but you're just someone with good luck. You would be the lucky one if I ran away, Amberose. I told you it is Ambrose. Instead of answering, I raised the magic power in my body. Last time, I had fought using the status of a constellation. This time, the opponent was great and it wouldn't work against Amberose. Thus, this was an all-out battle. The fifth bookmark, Kyogio's Rodgram, is selected. The exclusive skill, Miniaturization LV3, is activated. The exclusive skill, Electrification LV11+1, has been activated. A yellow heat wave burst out from Amberose's fist. It was the emergence of Brilliant Explosion, a skill of his story. He had the most impressive explosion stigma in the 73rd demon realm. The power was strong, but it wasn't difficult to avoid. The explosion range was large, so it was considered a long-range attack. You rat. The constellation, nay-leading rat, hates the words of Demon Ambrose. Amberose felt it was difficult to deal with the smaller me with a simple explosion, and he changed his operation. The heat from his hands rapidly contracted and changed into a small ball. Die. The condensed heat was more intense around his hands. He thought he would push me in strength after reducing the range. It was a good plan, but he met the wrong opponent. I wasn't an ordinary incarnation. I watched the fierce incoming explosion and stretched out my fist without hesitation. The center of the explosion was deeply pierced by the blow containing my magic power. My ears momentarily buzzed, and the fragments caught in the explosion scattered in the air. The flames in the area were swept away and went out. Only a blue-white lightning was scattered everywhere. I heard a sound and my vision blinked white. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snakeball, is astonished at your strength. Amberose couldn't be seen in the place that the blue-white lightning swept through. Maybe he flew away, or he might have died. Oh my God! The industrial complex was brutally destroyed. Some of the citizens confirmed my strength and were kneeling. At this point, I didn't know how I was in a fight. If I returned to the scenario properly, could I win one-on-one with a few constellations? Your incarnation body can't handle the level of force used. A significant portion of your incarnation body has been damaged. Damn, it was starting again. Still, it was fine. It would be over before my body was in tatters. Well, were they inspired by this situation? The citizens in the surrounding area started shouting, "Revolutionary, revolutionary." New constellations have entered the by 90594 channel. The number of constellations kept increasing. It was a different feeling from Bihyung's channel. Well, maybe because I thought of this as my channel. I went to the forefront of the battlefield and cut at the approaching nobles. Well, the Duke himself brought about his end by coming out without the factory. The wave of angry citizens gradually pushed the nobles. How long had it been? Finally, we arrived at the gate of the factory. "The revolution is around the corner, just a bit more," someone cried out. However, the next moment, an earthquake occurred from deep in the ground. The confused citizens screamed and sat on the ground. Something seemed to stand up in front of me. A huge building, which had been sleeping like an old beast, was raising its body. There was an engine sound reminiscent of a steam engine. Soot filled the night sky and loud sounds tore at the eardrums. My heart suddenly sank. The factory was operating, how? Nevertheless, I couldn't afford to think about it. A giant fist struck my defenseless self. A few buildings were smashed and the steel frames shattered. I momentarily lost consciousness before coming back. Your incarnation body is seriously damaged. Enter the main scenario now to prevent the breakdown of your stories. Blood poured from my body and the stories making up my body were shaken. Damn, my mind was in such a complicated state that I was caught off guard, making such a mistake. Nevertheless, I couldn't understand no matter how hard I thought. How was the factory operating? The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is pleased at the sight. The constellation, Nay Leading Rat, is enjoying your trials. A few constellations hope that you will suffer more pain. Damn it, I opened the channel, but none of these guys were on my side. The moment I gritted my teeth and raised my body, a familiar name was heard. The constellation, Prisoner of the Golden Headband, is holding his hair while closely scrutinizing you. Chapter 217, Real Revolutionary 3. Really? The constellation, Prisoner of the Golden Headband, is looking closely at your face. Did the great sage, the equal of heaven, really come? The constellation, Prisoner of the Golden Headband, is narrowing his eyes at your attire. I felt a strange sense of stability from the gaze. It was a strange feeling to feel at ease from someone watching me. Prisoner of the Golden Headband. The constellation, Prisoner of the Golden Headband, is looking at you. The great sage, the equal of heaven, had yet to notice. He wasn't certain if I was Kim Dokja or not. Maybe it was due to the story covering my face. I thought for a moment before deciding to give him confidence. That's right, it's me. Silence filled the air. It was a tight silence, like someone was taking a breath. After a while, the constellation, Prisoner of the Golden Headband, is shocked by your identity. The constellation, Prisoner of the Golden Headband, is asking how you are alive. The constellation, Prisoner of the Golden Headband, is wondering why you are here. The message that flew only at me seemed like it was covering the sky. The great sage, the equal of heaven, he isn't part of the absolute good or absolute evil system. He is of the neutral system. He is playful but also indifferent. He doesn't easily connect with other constellations due to his temperament. This was the great sage, the equal of heaven, that I knew from Ways of Survival, one of the strongest constellations in Ways of Survival, who fought against numerous constellations and built up a ridiculous myth-grade story. Even so, he died a lonely person without any deep bonds to the end. The constellation, Prisoner of the Golden Headband. I listened to the great sage, the equal of heaven's messages, while slowly closing my eyes. It was important to trust the information I knew. However, the great sage, the equal of heaven. I'm glad to see you again. The great sage, the equal of heaven, was silent for quite a long time. We might both be constellations, but he had a presence I couldn't catch. Even so, at this moment, I felt like the great sage, the equal of heaven, was right in front of me. The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, has sweet lips for a long time. The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is repeatedly grabbing and releasing his hair. The next moment something fell from the sky. I unintentionally caught it. It was the hair of the great sage, the equal of heaven. I couldn't help laughing. Perhaps this was how the great sage, the equal of heaven, showed his trust in someone. Your understanding of the constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, has slightly increased. I spoke towards the great sage, the equal of heaven. The fact that I'm here is a secret. Do you understand? The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is nodding. The constellation was better than I thought, and he would keep my secret well. By the way, how did you come here? Before I could finish speaking, one wall of a collapsed building tilted and someone appeared. It was Jang Haeyoung, who appeared with dirt falling from him. Fortunately, the fighter was still unharmed. Yu Jonghyuk, are you okay? The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is making a strange expression. That reminded me, I was still selling Yu Jonghyuk's name. It was time to tell my real name to Jang Haeyoung. I asked about the outside situation. How is it outside? It isn't good. I thought I knew what was going on. The industrial complex was shaking like there was an earthquake. Screams of the citizens came from all over the place, and Jang Haeyoung's expression hardened. The Duke is turning the industrial complex into a ruin while looking for you. It would be strange if this place wasn't turned into a wasteland. Once the Duke started the factory, there was no way to stop it. However, it was impossible for me to retreat now. How are the executioners? There is only one left. He is good at running. The blood of the demons on Jang Haeyoung's cheeks covered up the aura of a fighter. It was a remarkable achievement considering the short time. Take care of the remaining one, then the Duke. As I spoke, sparks appeared around my face. My knees instantly lost strength. Hey, you! The amazed Jang Haeyoung ran over and grabbed my shoulder. My skin started cracking apart. Your broken story is collapsing. The exile penalty will resume. The durability of your incarnation body is at a dangerous level. This damn incarnation body wasn't easy. The nickname of Sunfish might fit me more than Yu Jonghyuk. Biyu. But I called out, and Biyu's fingers moved through the air. Then a scenario message popped up. A new sub-scenario has arrived. Sub-scenario story repair. Category sub. Difficulty level D. Clear conditions. Restore the durability of your incarnation body to a certain level. Time limit, none. Compensation, none. Failure. It was a scenario I had requested from Biyu in advance. Originally, it would be impossible to use the sub-scenarios for personal gains. A formal channel of the Bureau would have never allowed it. The sub-scenario has alleviated the exile penalty. Thanks to Biyu's scenario, the anguish of my incarnation body was reduced. The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is interested in the way you use the scenario. 800 coins have been sponsored. Normally, I would have received a barrage of criticism from other constellations, but in this case, there wasn't a fuss because there was no compensation. In any case, now I was an exile and had to constantly receive scenarios. I had to stick to this until I entered the main scenario. The acquisition of a sub-scenario has delayed the collapse of your incarnation body. I barely managed to sigh and met the worried eyes of Biyu. I deliberately smiled. Fine, so don't worry. Biyu moved her head and disappeared again. She had to manage the scenario throughout the industrial complex, so Biyu would be feeling hectic right now. The sparks around my body fell silent, and Jang Haeyoung asked, "Are you really okay?" "I can hold on. Where is Aileen?" "She is with Mark. They are evacuating the citizens." It was a wise choice. It was too unreasonable for the citizens to fight back as long as the factory was in operation. If I didn't know, the real revolutionary was hiding somewhere. I moved and could see the atmosphere covered with fine dust. There were the bodies of the fallen nobles and the citizens. Is it going to end like this? Jang Haeyoung looked at the shadow of the factory in the distance and bit his lips. The transformed factory looked like a giant. It was an old giant spewing smoke from a chimney on its head. The giant's hand pulled out something from a nearby building. Quack! The dying noble struggled as he was caught by the hands of the factory. Looking closer, it was the marquis I fought before. Duke Du-yuk, he shouted painfully before being crushed in the factory's fuel engine. There was the sound of teeth grinding. Heavy flames emerged from the power plant side of the factory as if it was satisfied. Now I was able to determine how the Duke operated the factory. Jang Haeyoung spoke in a weak voice. Using his own men as a source of power, how can he do that? It means he doesn't care about the industrial complex anymore. Why isn't this his industrial complex? I activated Lamarck Kirin instead of replying. It was to temporarily restore my body by using story fragments. Kim Doksha thought, this guy is determined to become the Demon King. A large voice burst out from the head of the factory and challenged the sky. Look, constellations, this is what you want. It was the appearance of a duke fully absorbed in the story he was making. How old was he and how many years had he lived? All beings might just be children in front of the story. The Duke's words caused more constellations to enter BU's channel. Very few constellations are curious about Duke Siswit's actions. Maybe this was what I looked like. I was reminded of something. It is easy to attract the attention of the constellations. However, creating a good scenario is difficult. It was something the Dakibai King in Ways of Survival had once said. I thought this saying was correct. Then I had a thought. What was a good scenario? No, did it even exist? If we leave. Just wait a bit. I stopped Jang Haeyoung and looked up at the factory. The factory and the story weapons produced an unusual force that couldn't be tolerated by the existing probability. In other words, it was perfect for a self-destructive scenario. As expected, sparks burst from the joints of the randomly operating factory. I explained to Jang Haeyoung. Maybe his persuasion energy is lacking. It won't last long if he only has a few nobles. The factory's persuasion energy that was its fuel was made of countless story fragments. The story weapons consumed the persuasion energy and temporarily overcame the probability. It was easy to say that the factory was similar to my current incarnation body. Soon it would be caught up in a probability storm. However, unlike what I thought, the movements of the factory didn't become dull. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is looking at Siswitz with pleased eyes. The constellation, Nay-leading Raddies delighted with Siswitz's destruction. A few constellations are willing to pay for the probability. Damn, it was like this. There were those who paid the probability. Where is the revolutionary hiding? Once again, there was a huge earthquake, and the citizens screamed in an awful manner. I leaned against the building for a moment before slowly walking forward. Jang Haeyoung hurriedly grabbed my arm. You will die if you go now, can't you see that? I measured the durability of my incarnation body. Do I have enough power to get rid of this enemy? I didn't know. Can I kill it if I use electrification and Way of the Wind? I still didn't know. Jang Haeyoung killed the last executioner. I'll somehow take care of the rest. Jang Haeyoung stuttered at my words. Why are you going so far? You can run away. You aren't a real revolutionary. I hate this damn story. What? It's so obvious. I ran towards the factory. The streets were mostly deserted. Most citizens were trapped inside their houses and holding their breaths. I looked at the scene and remembered Yu Jonghyuk of the 111th regression. The industrial complexes last night arrived, and the revolutionary didn't appear. Yes, this was expected. However, I wished for a different story. Suddenly, a citizen bleeding against a wall reached out towards me. Revolutionary. What revolution? What was all this about? Why did so many people have to die? Why did this scenario exist? The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss is staring at you. The constellation, Nay Leading Rat, is yelling towards you. The constellation, Dog Who Threw Himself into the Flames, wants your destruction. The constellation sent messages towards me. Bu struggled as she was forced to send the messages towards me. I waved my hand to indicate that it was fine. Honestly, I wasn't fine before, but now I was good. The constellation, Prisoner of the Golden Headband, is looking at you. At the very least, one person was on my side. The constellation, Prisoner of the Golden Headband, wants you to smash that damn scrap heap. I flew into the air. Chapter 218, Real Revolutionary 4. The pistons of the cylinders installed on the factory moved wildly while the grinder roared. The story fragments that weren't digested popped out from the surface like screws. It was evidence that this factory wasn't a finished product. The Duke slightly frowned as he saw the unstable exterior of the smoking factory. It isn't at a bad level yet. The factory. Everyone in the demon world had a similar story, even if they were a Grand Duke. Of course, the power of each factory varied, but Siswit's factory was unique. It was worthwhile going to the underworld. A body height of 40 meters. The factory that resembled a giant was based off the giant soldier of the underworld. It was a weapon that he barely managed to get a look at by bribing one of the judges of the underworld. Of course, the Duke's factory was only a clone with an inferior output compared to the giant soldier. I can't be satisfied with this degree. The factory let out a harsh sound as if to express the Duke's disappointment. The blades of the grinder struck the ground. Dust filled the area as dozens of civilian buildings collapsed. Just like a child breaking a handcrafted toy, the Duke relentlessly broke them. Very few constellations are delighted at the exciting destruction. Some constellations are pointing to the fleeing citizens. It was a long story. The history of the Siswitz industrial complex had accumulated over countless years. Even so, there was no hesitation in the Duke's behavior. Quack. The Duke picked up the stories that were blown out of the grinder and thought, it is an offering to proceed with a bigger story. 400 years, a time when a dynasty was born and collapsed. During that time, Siswitz was the dictator here. He once loved everything in this industrial complex. He was sometimes a wise ruler and sometimes a tyrant. He tried to elevate the happiness of the citizens through a gentle reign, and he slaughtered them through oppression and tyranny. He was happy, sad, or sometimes interested. Then one day the Duke had only one emotion left. I'm tired. After going on a field trip to Olympus and the underworld, his thoughts became even stronger. Why should I be eating these stories? He never forgot the lavish dinner that was served at the dining table of the Queen of the Underworld. A sword master of another world, a great sage, a ninth circle great magician. Siswitz ate the finely cooked story pieces and was truly amazed. Oh my God, this taste! He had a soulless expression as he enjoyed the tastes that burst in his mouth. I see that you're pretty good at eating. Siswitz came to his senses and noticed that Persephone never touched the food in front of her. Persephone stared at the stories that were ravenously scattered on his plate like they were terrible food. Siswitz couldn't forget the disgrace he felt at that moment. I will go to the next scenario. Bigger stories, bigger stimuli, then he would gain a bigger power. I will become a demon king. I will live by eating huge stories that are far superior to those fucking guys. For that dream, it meant nothing to discard this trivial industrial complex. What revolution! His voice trembled, and the whole industrial complex shook. Look, there is no such thing as a revolution. It is just the role-play of the scenario. It was a tone that mocked all citizens. A play that has been repeated over and over for 400 years. You are fighting for such a foolish thing. Siswitz shouted despite also being part of the scenario. He felt like he could move on to the next stage. I can do it. It seemed successful to some extent. Duke Siswitz felt a sense of liberation as numerous constellations focused their gazes on him, a peripheral pleasure obtained from denying oneself. Siswitz felt like he was the center of the whole world for the first time. By the way, do you really think so? Someone cried out. Of course it was me. You. Damn, the problem was that I heard his inner thoughts too well. The character Demon Duke Siswitz is overwhelmed by his delusions. The exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, Stage 2 has been strongly activated. The thoughts of the Duke randomly poured in. It was like looking at his naked self. To a certain extent, even those who didn't use Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint could feel it. The constellation nay leading Rat's hands and feel are curling up from the Duke's words and deeds. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, says he is okay because he doesn't have hands or feet. These guys were even laughing. The Duke didn't know the situation and smiled at me. Fake revolutionary. Who is fake? I activated Bookmark and Way of the Wind before running forward. A giant blow narrowly passed by me. A crater occurred in the place where the grinder passed like a bomb had gone off. This level was enough to hit an upper-grade constellation. It was a power that I couldn't endure in this damn incarnation body. This was the power of a story weapon. It made non-constellations a match for constellations. Furthermore, Duke Siswitz might not be a constellation, but he was the demon had history-grade stories comparable to upper-grade constellations. The bombs from the grinder swept through the industrial complex. Citizens ran out crying as they lost their homes. They were people who lost their hometowns and came to the demon world, struggling to make a life here. The citizens who lost their jobs were staring at me with soot-covered faces. I looked at the citizens and had a thought. I also disliked the scenarios, but damn it. Kim Daksha thought, I hate to admit it. I seemed to understand why this scenario existed. I split through the air using Way of the Wind. I instantly arrived at the head of the factory and once again used electrification. The durability of your incarnation body is at a dangerous level. I fainted earlier and used up the duration of Bookmark in vain. I only had 20 minutes left. A blue-white whirl of lightning emerged from my right hand and rushed towards the factory. The exterior of the factory shook slightly. Kyuga. As expected, I lacked hitting power. My current incarnation body could only exert a quarter of the original firepower. Better than expected. Moreover, the sustainability wasn't long. Nevertheless, I had to fight. I had to defeat this guy with my own hands. The constellation status is released. Your incarnation body is several damaged, and only a fraction of the energy is released. It was a short time, but for a moment, the factory temporarily stopped working. I didn't miss this gap and focused magic power on both fists. This aura, you don't tell me. The gold dragon's broken heart is activated. Whenever the amount of magic power sharply decreased, the gold dragon's heart recharged my magic power. In the ensuing battle, the factory's hard shell started to be peeled off. Screws popped out and story pieces flowed from the gap. Kim Daksha thought, it would have been a good fight if my body was fine. The constellation prisoner of the golden headband is watching you anxiously. I stood firmly and hit the upper part of the factory with a fist containing all the power of electrification. If I knew that I would have such a hard fight, I would have learnt more diligently from Kyojios. Well, I guess I didn't have talent. The durability of your incarnation body is reaching its limit. If you don't stop combat immediately, the collapse of your body will resume. My breathing was becoming worse and my fists were slowing down. The factory was still in good condition. The Duke spoke with delight. Thanks to you, the last scenario of the industrial complex will be very sweet. I knew I couldn't win. First of all, I wasn't fighting for the sake of winning. Kim Daksha looked down at the citizens of the industrial complex. People were watching me. Some people's mouths were wide open, while others had their two hands joined together. I could also see Aileen and Mark. Each person was different, but they all had similar expressions. Revolutionary and fighting. It was enough to think this. There is a revolution. It didn't matter if it was real or fake. It had once been written that the things people believed in had power, just like a story became reality. Your influence on the story will become more pronounced. The next moment, the factory's huge arm took my attack. My body was thrown back by the shock wave. Your fighting ability is good, but you can't win. You are fake. I raised my body from the broken floor. As you said, I'm not a revolutionary. However, there is a revolution. Such a thing doesn't exist. Why do you think that? Is it because you were a revolutionary at first? In the end, even if a revolution occurs, the endless cycle of governance will repeat. I could understand Duke Siswit's feelings. I was well aware of the tragedy of the revolutionary scenario. What made a revolutionary a revolutionary? It is you who failed, not everyone else. There were terrible scenarios. There were tragic scenarios, however. There are no meaningless scenarios. No matter how rubbish a scenario, people ended up living that scenario. They were happy or sad. They struggled against the impossible. Someone died while someone else saved another person. This was the scenario of ways of survival that I knew. That's why I was able to keep reading Ways of Survival. My body became harder and harder to move. If I had followed the original novel, I wouldn't have suffered like this. Yu Jonghyuk had a thought. If he doesn't know who the revolutionary is, he can kill them all until the revolutionary emerges. In the end, the Yu Jonghyuk of the 111th regression made the worst choice. However, I didn't want to do this. That's why I kept fighting. The Duke once again struck, and in the end my back was grazed. Towards the me without strength, the giant hands of the factory came again and again. Your story is quite tempting. I'm going to eat you. He was a person who had gone to the underworld and tasted excellent stories. It was natural for him to be thrilled when looking at me. As soon as the giant hand was about to grab me, someone rushed towards me with all their power and rolled, holding me. A familiar woman stood in the place where dust rose. What are you doing? The chairman of the civil council, Aileen. I stood up on the wall with a frown. Get out of the way. You've done enough. Aileen didn't move. I saw her determined expression and a corner of my heart froze. Wait a minute, surely the revolutionary. Ha, where are you hiding? Self-proclaimed revolutionary. Aileen turned back after hearing the Duke's voice. I realized what she was going to do and hurriedly chased her. Just as she stood in front of the Duke, someone shouted, "The revolutionary is here." It was the first time I had seen this person. He shouted while pointing at himself. Someone has made a revolutionary declaration. He could have been a member of the civil council or a hidden citizen. I didn't know the revolutionary's name or face. They were just a passing extra not mentioned in Ways of Survival. What? No, I am the revolutionary. This time it was a woman's voice. I didn't know these faces. The woman trembled as she shouted, but nevertheless, she stood firmly upright. This was the start as voices burst from everywhere. Someone has made a revolutionary declaration. Someone has made a revolutionary declaration. Aileen and Mark were the same. It wasn't just the citizens. Many of the incarnations hiding in the house also cried out. They held weapons while shouting in an irresistible manner. I am the revolutionary, kill me. The features of the citizens holding weapons were extremely desperate. Numerous citizens armed with weapons advanced towards the factory like a wave. I was so excited that I stumbled. It was a sight that didn't appear in the Ways of Survival that Yu Jonghyuk lived. It was a pity. I wanted to show the 111th round Yu Jonghyuk this sight. If he saw this, he definitely would have made a different choice. At this moment, I am the revolutionary Yu Jonghyuk, someone shouted. I am Yu Jonghyuk. No, I am. What? No, wait a minute. I am Yu Jonghyuk. What the hell were they thinking? Now people were shouting a name instead of revolutionary. There were countless Yu Jonghyuks in the industrial complex. Someone has made a Yu Jonghyuk declaration. No, wait. The Starstream's achievement system is confused. At the same time, A man dressed in a black coat with a small doll on his shoulder arrived at an industrial complex. The man looked at the industrial complex and muttered, "Is this Kim Dokja's location?" The constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is nodding with a faint blush. Chapter 219, Real Revolutionary 5. Yu Jonghyuk entered the industrial complex by using covert maneuver and stealth shroud. You have entered the new main scenario area. The Demon World's industrial complex. He had visited the Demon World in the second regression, but it was the first time he came in this period of time. He slowly looked around and saw the citizens wandering the area. Their faces showed that they abandoned the scenario and felt despair at the world. It was one of the reasons why Yu Jonghyuk rarely formed bonds. He didn't want to share that despair. This was the most poisonous emotion for a regressor. It is quieter than I thought. I thought it would be a mess thanks to Kim Dokja. He looked around, and there wasn't anyone who seemed to be Kim Dokja. He would be easily seen with his unusual behavior. Yu Jonghyuk wondered if he was really alive. How annoying, it is too big. The constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is hopping. You won't make any unnecessary sacrifices. He turned his head to see the Uriel doll puffing up her cheeks. Yu Jonghyuk gave a small sigh and focused his eyesight as he looked around. He came here with the symbolic body of an archangel, so his actions were limited. I can grab a citizen and ask. As he focused his senses, he felt dark energy hiding among the citizens. It was a characteristic of demons. If it was a demon, then the archangel couldn't say anything. They must have a lot of information. Of course, a demon was strong. However, Yu Jonghyuk was a transcendent. He rose to this realm without borrowing the power of his sponsor. There were few presences that could threaten Yu Jonghyuk unless they were equal to a constellation. That is a good one. Yu Jonghyuk moved through the shadows like flowing water and quickly spotted his desired target. Yu Jonghyuk activated a skill before the startled demon Earl could scream. The exclusive skill, Sound Wave Blocking LV-10, is activated. The demon Earl's neck was grabbed. Yu Jonghyuk opened his mouth. "If you answer my questions carefully from now on, I will spare you." Of course, he didn't mean to spare the demon, but he still said so. It was because he knew from experience that this was more effective. The confused demon Earl shouted, Who are you? Kyuyok s such a thing." A brutal assault was poured towards the demon Earl, and his body became ragged in an instant. The demon Earl coughed up black blood and spat out all types of curses. Then he changed his tune in less than 5 minutes. Ask anything you want." Then Yu Jonghyuk opened his mouth. "Kim Dokja." Yu Jonghyuk was talking when he suddenly remembered something. Kim Dokja obviously wouldn't mention his own name here. Yu Jonghyuk changed the question. "Where is Yu Jonghyuk?" Someone has made a Yu Jonghyuk declaration. Someone has made a Yu Jonghyuk declaration. Numerous citizens shouted the name Yu Jonghyuk. It seemed as if the entire industrial complex had become Yu Jonghyuk. As I came to my senses, I noticed the countless Yu Jonghyuk advancing towards the factory. "I am Yu Jonghyuk. I am the real Yu Jonghyuk." Of course, I moved between them and raised a hand. Yu Jonghyuk, wow. Yu Jonghyuk should have seen this sight. I wondered what he would look like if he was here. The name of revolutionary Yu Jonghyuk is being widely spread in the 73rd Demon World. The Star Stream was a world of stories. So many citizens here were calling out Yu Jonghyuk's name, so he must have acquired a considerable degree of stories. I didn't know what these jerks were doing, but he got to eat well. Then a strange message was heard. "Your reputation is rising." The reputation of Kim Dokja is rapidly increasing in the 73rd Demon Realm. The messages continued to be heard. What was this situation? I never said my name. These damn guys. On the other hand, Duke Siswitz was baffled by the surging tide of people. The last executioner has died. Duke Siswitz's ruler effect is disabled. Then Jang Haeyoung finally completed his mission. All executioners in the industrial complex have died. Everyone in the industrial complex has gained the execution right for the ruler. From now on, the night of revolution will begin. Night of revolution. The citizens were excited as they heard this message for their first time in their lives. The execution rights for the Duke. They had the power to directly punish the ruler. Why guru? Just like waves hitting hard reefs, the citizens flocked towards the factory. The citizens were bloody and countless citizens were trampled on by the factory, but this caused the citizens' will to burn even higher. Smash it. The citizens were thinking that they just needed to smash this big pile of metal. They just needed to get beyond this iron barrier, and they could tear apart the Duke. However, the citizens didn't know. This was actually the greatest hurdle of this revolution. The giant grinder started to spin, and the citizens were sliced apart in the blink of an eye. Back off. In the revolutionary scenario, the night of revolution was the time when the Duke was the weakest. It was because every citizen in the industrial zone gained the power to kill the Duke. Nevertheless, there were conditions. The Duke needed to come out of the factory. Shit, it is too hard. The shell of the factory didn't break down no matter how it was smashed. The Duke laughed. Foolish things. At one time, he was also a revolutionary. Thus, he never thought about this day. Night of revolution was the most dangerous time for a Duke. Still, the Duke was absolutely safe as long as he didn't leave the factory. There is nothing that can destroy this factory. Thus, the Duke made his factory in the hardest form in the world. It was built on the basis of the giant soldier in the underworld. It was impossible for this fearsome weapon to be broken with the power of the citizens. The Duke showed no mercy in his movements. Every time the grinder moved, the citizens' bodies were torn to pieces. Indirect messages poured down from the sky like rain. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is drunk from the battlefield of blood. The constellation, Nay Leading Rat, is excited about the human slaughter. The coin, messages poured as the ranks of the citizens were broken. Alec. The revolution was crumbling before the solid outer wall that couldn't be broken. Alien, is everything ready? The temporary measures are over, but the battle. It's fine, I just need to move once. I responded roughly and stood up. This was probably the limit of what I was capable of with the story repair. Where are you hiding? Recite that smug revolutionary declaration again. I listened to the Duke's voice and went forward. I held firmly to unbroken faith and walked step by step. Sparks appeared around the outer shell of the factory thanks to excessive probability consumption. The factory was obviously a force outside the scenario. It was the constellations supporting this unfair scenario. Kim Doksha thought, if the Duke is crushing the people with a power from outside the scenario, I can do the same thing. Bu. The hiding Bu emerged with a bot. Extend the bandwidth of the channel to the underworld. It might be difficult for the present Bu, but if I didn't do this, I wouldn't be able to use this method. Can you do it? Bu seemed tired but nodded. But this was really the last resort. I remembered the memories of my second trip to the underworld. This is the key to making a giant soldier, understood. Oh, it was like this. Hey, I really appreciate it. Well, if you really appreciate it, place my name in the maker column. I hadn't used it until now because this story weapon consumed a huge amount of probability. A weapon that would cause a probability storm simply by summoning it. Therefore, this weapon was limited by probability unless it was a scenario of gigantomachia. It was impossible for me to summon it, even if I have the strongest sword. Prisoner of the Golden Headband. The story was a bit different if I wasn't alone. The constellation, Prisoner of the Golden Headband, is looking at you. Please help me. Of course, it was only a summoning even with the great sage, the equal of heaven's help. Even so, I could win just by summoning it. The constellation, Prisoner of the Golden Headband, says it is against the fairness of the scenario. I want to change this scenario. I stopped talking and glanced at the factory where sparks were flying. They might have received a buff due to the execution rites, but the citizens weren't able to lay one hand on the Duke. If this continued, the population of the industrial complex would be wiped up in the next few minutes. Besides, hasn't it stopped being fair a long time ago? The constellation prisoner of the golden headband is annoyed. Damn, I thought we were a bit closer. Originally, the great sage, the equal of heaven, was the type that didn't get easily involved in such matters. Maybe it was a miracle that he was even listening to me. Are you really going to leave these guys alone? They are the ones who hijacked the probability first. The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is rejoicing in the mess. There are no Dakibus here to deter them. The great sage, the equal of heaven, was silent. Thinking about it, he didn't lend me probability even during the King of a Kingless World story. In the end, I committed a taboo. Did you receive a strange message a while ago? The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is asking about what you mean. I don't know the details, but it is about the missing hair. A thunderous aura was felt from the sky. It was the great sage, the equal of heaven's anger. I shouted in reply to the anger, "That's right, they are the ones who sent it." The constellation, Nouveau Richer Snake Boss, is staring at you with astonishment. The constellation, Nay Leading Rat, is biting his nails at the unexpected situation. The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is furious. At this moment, the hair of the great sage, the equal of heaven that I left in my pocket, floated into the air. I replied with a sigh, "I will use it well." I grasped the hair and felt the power of a condensed story. There was inherent energy in the hair. It was hard for me to measure the strength of the great sage, the equal of heaven. The first thing that mattered here. I hesitated for a moment before watching the sky and chanting the starting words. Now, the sword designed to cut a sleeping giant. The moment I started chanting the first words, the color of the sky began to change. The clouds showed signs of abnormality, and a new, ominous aura filled the night sky. The constellations of the demon world have noticed your presence. Yes, I was caught. It would be strange if I wasn't noticed, but it couldn't be helped. I hoped that Persephone and Hades would take care of me. Now descend here. The discolored sky started to split in half. In the gap, two huge eyes were staring at me. The giant soldier Pluto has responded to your call. The sparks of a formidable probability shook my body. I jerked like an electric eel and red blood flowed from my eyes. I wanted to scream, but it was a pain that didn't even allow me to scream. The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is sharing your probability. My already tattered body wasn't immediately destroyed because the great sage, the equal of heaven, was bearing some of the price. The demon kings of the demon world are stunned by the surprise probability storm. A few constellations are surprised by the abnormalities in the scenario. There was another huge shadow covering the sky. Some citizens noticed and stared at the sky. Then their eyes slowly widened. Disaster. The Duke discovered it late and also looked up. A black gas emerged from the gap in the cracked sky. The shell boasted an eerie luster like a black dragon's scales. The Duke saw its appearance and exclaimed with shock. This how? Shock filled his face. I heard it was incomplete. It was incomplete at one time. To be exact, it was until I visited the underworld. The secret weapon of the underworld king, giant soldier Pluto. Finally, a huge armored weapon with a height of 30 meters fell from the sky. Chapter 220, Real Revolutionary 6. The body of the giant soldier appeared with a loud roar. In the original novel, it was the weapon of the underworld king, but in the second half, Yu Jonghyuk started using it in earnest. The ultimate weapon that struck the giant in the myths was summoned in front of me by the probability I shared with the great sage, the equal of heaven. Blood flowed as I looked up at Pluto with a messy and shaky vision. Your incarnation body has reached its limit. Your incarnation body has reached its limit. Shut up, I had to maintain consciousness, at least until I gave a command to him. What, where is this? Then I heard a voice. It was obviously a voice I had once heard before. This guy used his soul as the last ingredient. I called the guy's name, Kim Nam-woon. Then Pluto's thick body looked this way. Subway grasshopper. That's right. Kim Nam-woon laughed as if he realized everything. Ha ha ha, what, did you really use those starting words? The starting words to summon the giant soldier were given to me by Kim Nam-woon. Understood. I will use these starting words, so remember them well. If you call it properly, I might be able to help you once. I didn't know if he would really use those words as the starting word. However, his personality didn't change just because he died. You entered it directly. Haha, of course, I like this feeling. Originally, all souls planted in the giant soldier were overseen by the main system. Now Kim Nam-woon planted his own soul in the software of the giant soldier. Okay, it is a special service. Take a look, Audiobook. I'll give you a good show. I'm sorry, but I don't have the strength to do so. What, why is that? I lifted my finger without any strength and pointed somewhere. Pluto's gaze followed my finger and its mouth moved curiously. I opened my mouth. Finish it. The probability allowed me to summon the giant soldier for less than a minute. There was probably only 30 seconds left. The fear-stricken Duke was moving the factory this way. This is impossible. Why is the real giant soldier? The fiercely rotating grinder struck Pluto's outer shell. What is this crappy toy? The grinder that the Duke was proud of was torn down with a simple swing of its hand. It was a light hand gesture, like tearing a piece of paper. Did you call me to destroy something like this? It is really too much. There were 25 seconds until the summoning was cancelled. How annoying. Pluto was moving steadily despite the complaints. 20 seconds. It smashed the arms of the factory with an outstretched fist. 15 seconds. The hand sword completely paralyzed the operations of the factory. 10 seconds. A simple kick smashed the main power unit of the factory. The fearsome factory that ate a tremendous amount of stories sank down. It was impossible to know if the Duke inside the factory was dead or alive. Pluto's body turned towards me. Is it over now? Haha, then what now? Audiobook, now you're stuck with me. Then a tremendous probability storm swept over Pluto. Kim Nam-woon's voice was buried by a roaring sound that seemed to rip apart time and space. The body of giant soldier Pluto started to disappear into powder like it was vaporized. The probability was exhausted, and it was forced to return. 1 second. Damn underworld eye. That damn jerk. I'm not going back there, you idiot. The summoning of giant soldier Pluto has been released. The giant soldier disappeared, but people still couldn't react. The majority of citizens were stunned from shock, and those who managed to open their eyes were already crazy. It was natural. The incarnations here had witnessed the greatest god of death in this world. I turned my head and looked at the wreckage of the factory. The outer shell that wasn't damaged by my electrification was now a mess, like it had been hit by a fierce beast. There were no movements from the factory since its joints were broken, and the power part was destroyed. It had been destroyed by the giant soldier in less than 30 seconds. I slowly climbed up the factory and found the person sitting in the cockpit. The lid of the cockpit was cracked open, and the demon sitting there was bloody. Cough, cough. It was Duke Siswitz. The Duke looked up at me with eyes full of disbelief. Why you? What are you? The factory was the Duke's main story. The story was ruined, and the Duke absolutely wasn't safe anymore. I aimed unbroken faith at the guy. The Duke opened his mouth. From the Wenny people, I heard about you. The Duke foresaw his end and started chattering. Unfortunate constellation, you will never survive if you kill me, because... I stabbed his heart without hesitation. There was no energy left, so I fell from the factory along with his body. There was terrible pain, and I gasped as I looked up at the sky. Aileen came running to support me. The Duke. He is dead. Then the system messages came up. Demon Duke Siswitz has been defeated. 200,000 coins have been acquired. I weakly laughed. However, it wasn't yet time to relax. You have defeated the ruler of the industrial complex. You aren't a revolutionary. The normal scenario route wasn't followed, and the ruler inheritance has been cancelled. The inheritance is automatically transferred to the most prestigious person in the current scenario. The current hidden scenario is in progress. Kill the real revolutionary to enter the main scenario. It was as expected. Killing the Duke didn't allow me to enter the scenario. I sold the name of Yu Jonghyuk, so maybe Yu Jonghyuk was given the inheritance rights to the industrial complex. What is my status? Aileen bit her lips as she repaired my story. It's okay, I'll fix it. How much time do I have left? Aileen didn't answer. Tell me quickly. 10 minutes, no 5 minutes. My 5 senses were becoming paralyzed. My lips didn't listen to my instructions, and the sensation at end of my hand gradually faded. I couldn't hear the system messages anymore. Perhaps my body was broken enough that it could no longer be repaired. I didn't know why I was suffering like this despite coming to the demon world. Aileen's voice quivered. You said you are looking for a revolutionary. Yes. Why? I have to kill the revolutionary to enter the main scenario. There was no reason to hide it, so I answered honestly. Then Aileen stared at me. I see. Aileen seemed like she made up her mind. You can live because The revolutionary was in the ranks earlier, isn't that right? I cut off Aileen's struggling words. You wanted to hide and also wanted to run away. Still, you came out and fought hard. Aileen watched me for a moment before turning her head. I could tell what expression she was making without looking. Don't cry, I'm not going to die. I laughed without strength. Kim Daksha thought, if I kill the revolutionary here, the stories I've accumulated will be meaningless. There would be a method even if I didn't become the revolutionary. It had always been this way so far. Aileen, didn't you ask something before? The thing I asked you to make. Aileen pulled something out. It was a rectangular communication device equipped with a panel. It was the smartphone I asked her to produce. Turn it on, please. The panel turned on, and a message automatically appeared. You have acquired a new device. Synchronization has started. The synchronization finished, and as expected, a file was created on the desktop. My eyes were still blurred and I couldn't see properly, but it was obviously the text of ways of survival. Kim Daksha thought, I am a reader. All the answers are here. I somehow opened my eyes and looked at the text. However, my vision was blurred and I couldn't see. I had to find a way to break through this situation by reading ways of survival, but funnily enough, I couldn't read it. Kim Daksha thought for the first time. Damn it. This is the end. At last, even Aileen's face was blurred. The hidden scenario, self-proclaimed revolutionary, has been cleared. It was an auditory hallucination. You have become a revolutionary. I definitely thought it was a hallucination. Congratulations, you have officially entered the main scenario. The exile penalty has ended. Your incarnation body has automatically started to recover. Your collapsing stories are recovering. It was impossible. My 5 senses were returning and my faded vision started to reappear. I looked around with wide eyes. Aileen was safe. Jang Haeyoung and Mark were the same. None of them were dead. Then why? This wasn't the end. The name Kim Daksha is being widely spread in the 73rd demon world. All the demons in the Jilabat complex are afraid of your name. The citizens of the Jilabat industrial complex have joined your revolution. I thought I heard wrongly for a moment. The Jilabat industrial complex. It wasn't the Siswitz industrial complex. A group of people who consider Kim Daksha a hero have appeared in the Jilabat industrial complex. The Jilabat industrial complex was quite a distance from the Siswitz industrial complex. There was no way my name would resonate there. I listened to the explosive messages and thought about some faint possibilities. Even so, the possibilities were too dim. Someone has killed the ruler of the Jilabat industrial complex. You are currently the most prestigious person in the Jilabat industrial complex. Due to the scenario possibility, you have become the owner of the Jilabat industrial complex. This was impossible. It was something that couldn't happen. Hello. There was a flustered laugh as relief spread from deep inside my heart. I wonder why. I glanced at Aileen's wrist watch at this moment. The clock wasn't going backwards. The time was advancing steadily without rewinding. The needle could go back, but time wouldn't return. He came. I was so happy that I wanted to call out his name. Huh, what are you saying? I smiled and said, the real Yu Jonghyuk came. I couldn't see or hear it, but I could feel it. That person was definitely in this world. The guy who slaughtered a strong demon with the heaven-shaking sword had arrived from beyond the horizon. I was lost in these wild feelings and forgot about my smartphone. Perhaps Kim Dokja should have checked the smartphone first. I heard the fourth wall's words and reflexively picked up the fallen phone. As usual, the title of the text file appeared on the screen. Then I realized something, and a corner of my heart was frightened. Something had been altered. To be exact, there were strange words attached to the title of the TXT file. 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World, First Revision, TXT.